Hey everyone, I'm your Orca pal Sandra and welcome back to another episode from Orca Camp on Vancouver Island. I want to talk about something that's been circulating a lot online over the past few years, and even I posted a reel, which is supposed to be a joke, that these so-called orca attacks on sailboats and yachts. So you've probably seen the headlines: killer whales sinking boats, orcas targeting humans, even revenge attacks. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's not what's happening. And I'm sure many of you guys know that already, but let's rewind for a second. This all started back around 2020 in the waters of Spain and Portugal, especially near the Strait of Gibraltar. And the orcas involved are not just any orcas. They are very specific, small, and actually endangered population known as the Iberian orcas. There are only about 35 to 40 individuals left. I have to double check some of those numbers, but in that range. So in the entire group, in that entire clan. So right away, we are not talking about a global phenomenon. We're talking about a very localized behavior in a very small population. Now, after I dove deeper here for a few days, what were they actually doing? So because they weren't dragging boats away into the ocean, they weren't hunting people, and they weren't randomly attacking vessels, what they were doing, and very specifically, was interacting with the rudder of the sailboat. So now that's the flat blade in the back of the boat of the controls steering. These orcas would approach from behind and they would nudge it, push it, sometimes bite it, and in some cases even break it. And if you lose a rudder, we all know that, you lose control of your boat. In few situations, boats took in water and therefore sank, of course. But here's the part that matters most. After, again, I spent a few days diving deep into it. No humans were harmed, not one. So the real question is, why? Why would a group of orcas suddenly start doing this? And there are a few theories. The first one seems to be commonly people agree on that. And the one most scientists lean towards is actually pretty simple. We all know orcas are playful, curious, and they like to be stimulated. And as we all know, orcas are incredibly intelligent animals. They explore the environment constantly. They test things, they interact with objects, they play. And a rudder of a sailboat is basically a moving, resisting object in the water. It pushes back, it vibrates, and it reacts. To an orca, that can feel like a toy. Now, the second theory is even a bit more fascinating, I find, and that's learned behavior. Researchers have identified a small group within this population, often referred to as the GLADIS, so Gladis orcas, who seem to have started this behavior. And then it spread. Orcas live in a very tight family structures, as we know, and they learn from each other. So within that tight-knit family, from 35 to 40 individuals left. So what likely started with just one or two individuals playing around yachts became kind of a trend within that orca family, like a cultural behavior, which is something we see in orcas all over the world constantly, that they teach their young and pass certain behaviors on. There's also that third theory I found, and this is the one the media really ran with, that this behavior came from a traumatic experience. So possibly a collision with a boat or an entanglement, and that one individual orca may have reacted and that response spread. Now, is this even possible? Yes. Is it proven? No. And this is where we have to be careful not to project human emotions like revenge onto wildlife, because that's not how they operate. Now, here's something really important to understand. If these specific orcas actually wanted to destroy the boats, they could have done that easily. And we all know they are powerful enough to do that, and they're intelligent enough and capable enough. But they don't. They simply interact, they play, they disengage, and then they move on. Okay, so so here's this thing, and this is where I want to bring it back to what we experience here on the coast of Vancouver Island with our northern resident orcas, because people often ask, do you orcas do this too? And the answer is simply and clearly no, they don't. It's just not part of their behavioral repertoire, I would say, almost. The northern residents are a completely different population. They are also fish eaters, just like the Iberian orcas, but their behavior is very distinct. For example, our northern resident orcas are known for the beach rubbing. That's when you see them come close to the beach. That's what they pass on to their youngs. So we're talking about population here of roughly 340 individuals spread across the multiple family groups, as mentioned before, the A, G, and R clan. And they have very specific cultural behaviors as well. They focus on salmon, as we know, especially Chinook, and their travel predictably routes following the salmon. They communicate constantly, and each clan and pod has its own dialect, and they have their own traditions. And again, the well-known one are the rubbing beaches along that Vancouver Island coast. But what they don't do is interact with boats that way. In fact, if anything, they tend to avoid them. They are not there for the humans. They're simply, we are in their environment, and that's always what we have to keep in mind, right? And that's where this conversation becomes really important, I feel, because we people see headlines about orcas attacking boats, and that creates a certain fear. It creates this idea that orcas are unpredictable or dangerous to humans, and that couldn't be further from the truth. What we are actually seeing is intelligence, and we see curiosity, we see a culture that has passed on that, for them, playful behavior to their young. And this is something I always say to our guests at Orca Camp. Orcas are not here to perform for us. I know it's always hard to break that to you guys. I'm sorry, girls and boys. They're not here to interact with us. We are entering their world. And sometimes they choose to come close to our kayaks or to our boats. And sometimes they come close to shore to have that belly scrub along the beach, and you might only see them once in 4 days in the middle of the strait, and sometimes you might see them every day. But when you understand who they are, how they think, how they move through the world, that moment becomes everything. So when you hear about orcas attacking boats or attacking humans, I want you to pause and ask a different question. Not why are they aggressive, but what are they trying to understand? Because more often than not, they are not acting out of aggression or, as one headline said, revenge. That really made me laugh. They're acting out of curiosity. And that changes that entire understanding of orcas and their behavior when they approach boats, yachts, and especially sailboats like that. Thanks again for being here. And if you're someone who wants to experience orcas in a way that's grounded in reality and not in headlines, you know where to find us. Thanks for being here, friends. See you guys next time. Bye.